you looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub 2 Deals Show with your host, Sub 2 expert William Tingle.
Hey Sub-Tours, this is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to. We talk about how to get the deed, how to turn leads into deeds, and all the rest. Today's topic is ready, fire, aim. Now, you're probably wondering what the heck I mean by ready, fire, aim. It usually said ready, aim, fire. Well, it usually is, but we're creative real estate investors, so we do things just a little bit differently than the rest. So just bear with me, give me a minute, and I'll explain just what I mean. Several years ago, there was a book that came out called Ready, Fire, Aim. And it was a business book. I believe it was info marketing. I can't really remember. That's been about 10, 12 years ago, but I believe it was around 2008. I can't remember the author's name. But whatever the specific topic, the important thing about the book was the point it was trying to get across was that anytime you want to reach a goal quickly, you simply need to take action first and then make any necessary adjustments or correct for any mistakes or just, minor things that were wrong later on. So, and that doesn't mean you rush out if you know absolutely nothing and put a lot of people at risk and do a lot of crazy stuff you shouldn't be doing. What it really means is at a certain point, you know enough to take action and you can fill in the blanks a little bit later. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Now, this may not be specific to subject to, but it certainly applies to real estate investors. I talk to a lot of real estate investors every single day, and most new investors have a real problem getting started. And I think this has a lot to do with it. So let's go over this and see if you really understand what I'm talking about here. Now, let's break this thing down into three separate stages. Okay, stage one is called ready. And this is the research phase where you begin researching the ins and outs of what's necessary to reach your goal. Now, in real estate investing, it might mean reading up on what's needed for you to find sellers or how to complete the paperwork needed to close a deal. If you bought a course, it would mean you were going through the course and just taking in and absorbing the information. The secret to being successful in the ready stage is to not obsess about understanding things 100%. You don't really have to know every single detail about everything to get going and do something. Okay, when I bought my first Sub 2 deal, I completed the deed with a notary acknowledgement, which isn't even used in Georgia. Now, the deed was still valid, but it was a mistake nonetheless. Had I waited until I knew exactly what to do, maybe I wouldn't have acted on that deal. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten it. And maybe I wouldn't have ever bought a Sub 2 deal. I mean, who knows? But the important thing is, when I think about my first deal and I realize that I ran out there literally half blind on what to do, but I just knew I had to get out there and buy some houses. And so I took action. And that's really how you get going. Okay, so stage two is the fire stage. Now, this is where you charge straight in, you take immediate action. Even if you don't fully understand every minute technical detail of the how, or how you're going to structure the deal or how to do the paperwork, you just get out there and do it. Inaction and doing nothing is the worst possible thing in the world. There'll never be a better time than now. So pull the trigger, get out there and take action. Depending on where you are, there may be 1,000 other investors ready to jump on that deal. So if you're lucky enough to be the first one there, lock it up. It's funny, I was just talking to a student of mine today about the competition in his market. He was telling me that he's seriously thinking about going remote due to the heavy competition in his major city. And I told him I wouldn't discount the location just because there are a lot of other investors. He just needs to be faster than they are. And that's totally possible. I mean, if you know what needs to be done, just get out there and do it. Okay, stage three is aim. Now that you've taken action, you can sort out the things and make corrections for any wrong assumptions you made in the beginning. But because you've already taken action, making small adjustments will be fairly easy. If you miscalculated the value of the property and Then you find out its actual value. You may have to go back to the sellers with an adjustment on what you can give them for their equity, or maybe the sellers were not completely forthcoming with the amount owed. And when you get the reinstatement figures back on a foreclosure, you may have to tell them there just isn't room to give them anything. Any of these problems can be fixed during the due diligence process. Even if the deal turns out to be not a deal at all, you're still light years ahead of the guy who's still rereading that real estate course and hasn't done anything else since he got it. Most investors are stuck in the ready phase. They spend hours and hours researching and not enough time actually doing. And why do they do this? They do it because it's a whole lot easier to read about buying houses, about talking to sellers and making deals, than it is to really get out there and do it, especially when you're getting started. I get that. Most beginning investors keep reading and reading. They listen to tapes or CDs or weekly coaching calls. They think there's some secret sauce or special ingredient that's going to be revealed on that next call or on that next webinar. And they're looking for that one more piece of information that will make them overcome their fear and actually get moving. They think they're going to find it in a Facebook group or on a blog post or webinar, but trust me, there is no secret sauce. If you've been studying for a while, you know enough to get out there and take some action. We're going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I'll tell you how I handle the ready, fire, aim process. And then I'll tell you a story about a deal of mine where the investor who didn't act quickly enough lost out on a pretty big payday. So you come back, you're going to enjoy that.
The Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, have you been trying to learn how to invest in real estate? It can take you years to learn the ropes on your own. How many people do you know who have been looking into real estate investing for years, but have never bought a single house? Do you have shelves full of courses but lack the courage to get out there and close on that first deal? Are you tired of so-called coaches who always seem to have just one more thing to sell you that you absolutely must have to be successful? Are you tired of trying to piece it all together with YouTube videos and free forums found on the internet? Is that really any way to build a business? William Tingle has been coaching real estate investors all over the country for over 16 years. And if you are ready, he can show you how to buy all the houses you want, anywhere you want, without ever having to ask a banker for one thin dime. Contact William today at sub2deals.com and schedule your free 30-minute strategy session. Talk it over, and if you think you're finally ready for success, he'll get you going. Back to the show, the Sub2 Deals Show, with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub2ers, we're back with today's topic of ready, fire, aim. And I just want to give you guys a quick example of exactly how I handle this. Now, when I have a seller who's indicated an interest in working with me on taking over payments on their house, there are really only 6 things I need to know to make a final decision on whether I'll buy it or not. I need to know the actual value of the house. Now, the value of the house is always the starting point for me. I usually know it before I ever get the seller on the phone, but always verify in the due diligence process. You need, as an investor, to have a general idea of values for different neighborhoods where you're doing your buying. You should, really know it pretty closely, just right off the top of your head. Of course, when you get things under contract, you'll go back and you'll verify just to make sure you're right. But knowing those numbers lets you make decisions quickly. Number 2, I also need to know the seller's bottom dollar asking price. Now, this may or may not include any cash to the seller. Most times for me, it's just the loan balance. I'm going to be taking over payments. Very rarely do sellers get a check from me. It happens from time to time, but most of the time, I'm just going to be taking over payments. Number 3, I need to know the balance on the loan. I need to know payment terms, the interest rate, if the payment includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, a balloon if there is one, and if there is one, the date and the amount that it's due, current loan status, or how much to bring it current if it's behind or if they're in foreclosure, and the total principal, interest, taxes, and insurance must not exceed market rents. I sell every house that I get with owner financing, but if the case happened where I couldn't for some reason do that, I want to know I could at least rent the house out and not have an alligator on my hands. So the total principal, interest, taxes, and insurance can never exceed market rents. Number 4, I need to know the repairs needed, if any. 9 times out of 10, really more than that, It'll be none, because I very rarely buy houses that need any repairs. If it's anything beyond maybe cleaning the carpets or touching up some paint, it's just not happening. Having to do repairs on a house, especially when I invest remotely, just adds another element of difficulty to the deal, and I don't like a lot of moving parts. Number 5, an actual visual inspection of the house. Now, I trust the seller and all, but Reagan was right. We trust but verify. And I do that with getting somebody local to go out and take photos and videos for me. Number 6 is a condition of title. Now, some people out there will tell you that, listen, the seller's signing a warranty deed, so if there are any title problems, it's on them to make sure there's good title. But that involves a lawsuit and a whole bunch of other stuff. Trust me, know the title's good now. So when it's time for that buyer that you've put in place, that's been paying you every month for the last 2 or 3 years, goes out and gets a new loan, there's nothing standing in the way of your big payday. You don't want anything to stop that. Now, that's really all that I need to know. And once you have these facts, you can go ahead and make your decision. Do I close or not? But know this. None of these things have to be verified before you can sign a contract with your seller. If the seller tells you they only owe X and you think the house is worth Y, if it sounds like a good deal, lock it up. Get it under contract. Because the chances are, if you get that thing under contract, the seller won't even talk to another investor. They'll feel like the problem's going to be solved. They relax, they calm down. You can move along with your due diligence process. If you make a seller wait until you check everything out and then go back for a contract, listen, if it was really a deal, the chances are it's going to be gone. So lock it up, then sort it out. That's what we mean by ready, fire, aim. Okay? We're going to check things out after we've got this thing squared away. Now, once the deal's under contract, complete your due diligence, make your decision, because you really can't steal in slow motion. All right, I want to give you an example, a perfect example of this type of situation. Now, this was back when I lived in Georgia, and this was a small ranch, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath brick house in foreclosure. Now, in Georgia, the timeline for foreclosure is very short. There are no documents filed at the courthouse beforehand, no lis pendens, or anything indicating there's any problem with the house being in foreclosure. On the first Saturday of every month, the foreclosure notices hit the paper, and that's the first notification that you've got of a problem. 4 weeks later, on the first Tuesday of the following month, is the foreclosure auction. That is the timeline that we have to work in. So on the first Saturday, any investors that pursue foreclosures are scrambling around. You have your cards and letters ready on Saturday morning. You're out at daylight to pick up that newspaper. You're getting those addresses and you're getting those things in the mail. The ones with the real equity, you're knocking on the doors. Everybody else gets a card or a letter. Well, this house got a card and we got a call on it. And the guy's on the phone and he says, hey, I'm moving out. I don't want the house. You want to come look at it? And I knew where the house was located. I knew the approximate value is probably close to $90,000. And, it's a nice area for first-time home buyers and that sort of thing. And I said, well, when can I come out and talk with you? Can I come today? He says, listen, I've got an appointment with another guy at 3 o'clock. You can come out at 3:30. Okay, great. So I get there a little early. The other investor's still at the house. His car's parked out in front. It's raining like crazy. I park down the street and wait, and sure enough, the guy comes out in due time, gets in his car and leaves. I pull up, go in the house to talk to the guy. Sure, it's already under contract, but no, it's not. He says the other guy said he needed to talk it over with his partner and he'd get back in touch with me. Well, we sit down, we talk, find out the guy hasn't made a payment in 6 months. Payments are $400 a month. Do a little math in my head. Okay, 6 months, $400 a month. We're probably looking at somewhere with fees and everything else of $3,000 or so to cure. He says, I want $2,000. I look at his bank statements and his, mortgage statements, and it looks like he owes $35,000, $38,000 on the house. So it looks like a great deal. Now, the house does need a little bit of work. It needs paint. It needs carpet. It needs some sheetrock work in one room in the back. and then it needs all the fixtures are out of the half bath. It's a strange thing, and I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but a lot of people in foreclosure are doing remodels on their house. I've never really understood it. They're not making their house payment, but they're making home improvements. I found that to happen an awful lot dealing with foreclosures, but this guy was pretty much the same. He was totally uninterested in the house and just wanted it gone. So it looked like a great deal. We signed it up on the spot, went out, did our due diligence, met the guy in his driveway a couple of weeks later, handed him his check for $2,000, got the keys, got the house. Okay, we go in, we do the little bit of fix up, we put in the carpet, paint the house, do some sheetrock work, reinstall some fixtures in the bathroom. All told, we spent under $10,000. So between curing the default, giving him his cash, and making the repairs, we're in for under 15. We listed the house, got a sale on it within 60 days, and collected a check at closing for over $35,000. Now, I want you to know that during the rehab of this house, we always put a sign out front that said, our phone number, we buy houses, that sort of thing. I actually got a call from the other investor during the fix-up on this house, and he told me, he said, I had a verbal agreement with that seller. And I said, well, fella, if you're in real estate, you should know there's really no such thing as a verbal contract. He said, well, I'll tell you this, I carry contracts with me now, and next time I'll get it under contract. And I said, well, that's great. I guess he learned a lesson, about a $35,000 lesson, but nonetheless, the important thing that I want you to take from this is, if it sounds like a deal, it may well be one. Certainly, if it's not, getting it under contract is not going to hurt you. If it is, in fact, a real deal, you don't have time to go think about it and talk to somebody in a coaching session or bounce it off of 2 or 3 other investors to see what they think before you get it under contract. Because if you try to do that, somebody that's a little bit sharper, a little bit faster is going to come in behind you. And when you go back to that seller, the house is already going to be under contract. New investors, if you've been studying what you're doing for a while, you probably know enough to go out and get a house under contract. And as long as you have a due diligence period in there where you can check things out safely while you have the house locked up, that is certainly the best way to go. I'm going to recommend to you, anyone out there that's been studying a certain niche in real estate, to go out there and take some action this week. Go out there and talk to a seller. Get a house under contract. If you make a mistake, then you back out of the contract under the clauses that you have, under the due diligence, or the value's not there, or the repairs are excessive, or termite clauses, or whatever you may have in there that are legit. I'm not talking about a bunch of weasel clauses or things where you tie somebody up and keep them from selling and then you don't really do anything. We're talking about something that's a fair amount of time, a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, to check things out and make sure things are right. But make something happen. Don't be a perpetual learner. Take the knowledge that you have, take the assets that you have, people that will help you, and get out there and buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub2 Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com, on Facebook at Sub2 Deals. We'll catch you next time.